guys, it's Two Guys in Hockey Talk. I'm Pavel, and
I'm Evan. Glad to be back for our final edition, Pavel, of our NHL Playoff Edition. This is it.
Yeah. Somebody will be awarded the Stanley Cup. Lord Stanley is coming either back to Tampa again, back-to-back, or the Montreal Canadiens break the Canadian curse. Evan, how's your week been?
Oh, it's been a fabulous week. Lots to follow in hockey. And so because we as always, I'm always jacked. We always got a loaded show. We got tons of material that we want to touch in on. So I was thinking, let's actually start with the finals right now between Tampa and what's that other team? Oh yeah, Montreal Canadiens. Little harsh here. I'm not a Canadiens fan, but I do appreciate the Canadiens. I do want to mention to you guys that for those of you that may be recording today's game, nothing is mentioned. We're not putting anything out there about today's game, so everything will be based on the first 4 games.
Yes.
So, Pavel, where do we start in this final? There's been some interesting takes, some interesting scenarios, but I do want to say one thing, and I'm going to post this. I got a couple pictures that I pulled off. Every win throughout the playoffs of Montreal ends up with a picture with one of their players on his back, like he's playing dead, all excited, and everybody coming to jump on him.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say every what's it called? Every game ends with a veteran of the team from previous, history in the Montreal Canadiens. So the last one, had, if you saw, Patrick Waugh and Guy Lafleur were in the audience, right? So
you're right.
They're bringing out the big guns for this. I mean, they're doing whatever they can, but I mean, give credit where credit's due. I mean, Josh Anderson, when he signed that deal, when he was traded for Max Domi, I mean, that was a lot of people, kind of scratched their head and said, Bergevin, what are you doing? And I mean, it's paying off, and he's doing what he's got to do, and regardless of what that contract may look like in a few years, he is solid for them. He is performing. Let's talk about the big thing. Kotkaniemi has been removed, and he was not playing. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that. So I just want to mention on Josh Anderson, that's why they brought this guy in. He is perfect for the playoffs. He's a playoff type player. So Kotkaniemi, okay, and I always say it wrong, so forgive me if you want to correct me, put it right there in the chat and correct me, but I don't know how you're going to correct without being able to sound it out to me. So I guess I'm puzzled. Fourth line, is it because he doesn't fit as a fourth liner? That he's more of a top 6, maybe a top 9. It's just like they can't find a place for him. I don't fully understand some of these coaching decisions, but then on the same hand, they won again. They actually came back in this game. And so how do you doubt a coach's decision when they sit certain players, but they can still win?
Yeah, well, I was wondering the whole time why Romanov, as however you pronounce it, I get correct. He has been sad. And, I know Gustafsson was brought in as a power play specialist, and he had that, he's a little bit more experienced. But, I mean, Romanov really knows how to perform. I know he's a young and upcoming D. He spent some time in the KHL, but he's had a good season. We talked about him earlier on, some standout players at the beginning of this season who, could be young, good, solid rookies for different teams. And he was the one we kind of discussed on previous episodes, so feel free to check that out. Yeah. I think the biggest thing with this series thus far has been goaltending, and I think right now it's coming down to Vasilevsky is playing out of this world, and I don't know if he feels snubbed from the Vezina conversation, but he was 4th on the list.
Yeah.
So,
it's Vasilevsky is such. He's such a sound technical goalie, but he's such an incredible athlete. How is he not going to go down in history as one of the best Russian goalies out there? I mean, the guy, I actually feel, Pavel, he's underrated. I know he gets a lot of love. A lot of people think he's great, but how much they talk about him compared to, and could it be because of the team in front of him? He doesn't get the credit. Just Martin Brodeur dealt with that for years because they had such a wonderful defense, and they always said he couldn't perform this well if he didn't play for another, if he was playing in another system, if he was playing for a different team without the defense. But Vasilevsky, I mean, is working himself into, to me, a top 5 Russian goalie all time.
100%. And I think that with this team, I can see almost 6 or 7 Hall of Famers if they win the Cup again. And that's not to say, and I know I don't want to get ahead of myself, I can honestly see them making a 3-peat next year. That is how deep and strong this team is. Like Tampa Bay, give credit where it's due. And John Cooper, I think he's one of the longest serving head coaches in the NHL.
Yeah.
He deserves all the credit in the world. He gets those guys to play a mean, gritty game. They can get nasty. Nobody is happy on that team. You don't have someone like a Teemu Selanne who's always smiling and enjoying himself. They all just look so bitter, even though they're in the final.
Hey, now that you're mentioning Tampa, I'm going to come back here in a moment. I don't want to detract from the actual game. I want to talk about what that team was left with when Yzerman left. Excuse me, and what was built there, because I know we give Yzerman a lot of credit, but I think we're giving him too much credit, and I want to come back to that in a minute. Let's go back a little bit here to Foley. Excuse me. But Toffoli he's almost been missing in action in these finals. And I'm reading a lot of different people, some of the writers, some of the play-by-play, and a lot of people think he's fighting an injury because this is his type of time to come out and show. He's just such a competitor. He's got such a drive, and we're not seeing that right now.
No.
So
it's possible. I mean, that's the thing with any series. It always comes out. We heard about Alex Martinez in Vegas versus Montreal. Like, you hear a lot of these players who come out and say, "I played through," and we discussed this on the show. Would you play through an injury? I mean, of course you would. Why not? The opportunity. Maybe your shifts are a little bit different. I've been really impressed with Corey Perry. However, the one player that I find that's been kind of lacking in any kind of I don't want to say skill, but in terms of impact, I think is Eric Staal. I think he's really, really not done much for what he was brought in to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's again, another veteran guy. Maybe he's nursing an injury as well, but he needs to be more impactful because he is not as visible as I thought he would be in the last few games that I've watched.
And what about Gallagher? Again, this is Gallagher's game. Gallagher, I mean, he's in the play. But normally he's front and center, the focus of the Canadians almost in all those tough games. And he's playing well. It's just how badly do injuries, and that comes back, like you said, to the earlier conversation, how bad do injuries really affect players? Because coming back, he's still not been the Gallagher of old that signed that contract at the beginning of the year. So I think
he was benched, right? Or he was scratched before the end of the season, or because he had to do a stint in Laval, I believe it was, with Carey Price.
Yeah, they both
took the AHL team because they were injured, and so they weren't 100%. Maybe when they came back against Toronto, but
yeah, exactly. Caulfield. So I pulled up his stats. This guy is they're falling in love with this rookie. 4 goals, 8 assists for 12 points in 19 playoff games. And that he's just not a one-shot wonder, that he's just going to be a playoff guy. This guy can produce at such a small size. I mean, you talk about big heart and a big player playing in a small body. I mean, he is the living proof that he can perform even in the clutch in this. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Caulfield will bring to the Montreal Canadiens next year. And he has the opportunity to be still a rookie for his first year.
Yep. So I'm looking forward to him having his first fight, maybe versus Johnny Gaudreau.
So Caulfield, I'm going to say it here. Caulfield wins the Rookie of the Year in 2021-22.
Oh, that's a bold prediction. So what you're saying, because if I recall from a few episodes ago, you said that Montreal has no superstars, and yet Cole Caulfield is no superstar, Evan? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, how can he be a superstar? He just started, right? He's just coming into the game. That's my
way he's performing.
Well, he's performing, but that doesn't make a superstar. You still have to prove yourself. There's been no proving of him yet. So
he's in the final for the Stanley Cup final.
Well, so guys, we want you to comment. So Pavel believes that a superstar, long as he's performing, do you think he needs to prove himself like I do? So let the cat know what you think. Or am I wrong? Am I totally out to lunch? Am I saying one thing, talking out my butt on the other end? So, okay.
So you wanted to chat about Yzerman and that we're giving him too much credit.
Okay.
Elaborate.
Okay. Yeah. So here's my thing on Yzerman, right? So, he with Steve Yzerman, the team was not solid when he left, and I haven't done all my analytics and I pulled on behind the scenes, but just doing some quick looking, that team, in my opinion, has some good players and some good work that's been done by Yzerman. But I think Yzerman is getting all the credit in Tampa Bay for what he did, when truly it was his replacement that I believe has added. So what I want to do next week, in topping off our show, I'm going to bring a whole bunch of information, and if you guys got some stats that prove me wrong or to back me up, you guys feel free to make some comments here, and I'm going to give you throw this out at you, Pavel, because I know you're a big Yzerman fan. I am too, but his skills, I've always questioned some of his draft picks. I think he's a hit and miss on some of them, and I see it in Detroit. I know a lot of people trust in him with what he's doing. But I also know that you got to be careful, because I didn't believe in Sakic in the early days either. And Sakic has gone on to actually prove himself. So I want to do a more in-depth study on this, because I don't believe Steve Yzerman is as good of a manager as we've given him credit to be.
Oh man, that's a hot take. I don't think I would agree with that. I don't dispute what Julian Breezeball has done for the team extra, but he was gifted like a huge contender. And a team that has been able to succeed at the level that it has, and especially since they had won the Cup in 2004, and then they went through a little bit of a, drought, or, a little bit of a slog, as one would say. But they came back and they built, and I mean, they've been to the final a few times. They faced some adversity and hardships. They've had to make some very difficult decisions, whether it was the Stamkos sweepstakes. As you recall, people were all on that with Stamkos going to Toronto, but when you draft someone like Point, where he was in the, draft, when you trade Ben Bishop, who was considered like an elite goaltender, to get rid of him and then go for someone like an underdog like Vasilevsky, who nobody expected. I mean, to me, he made some good choices. You have a Vezina Trophy winner. You have a Norris Trophy winner. You have a Hart winner in Kucherov. Like all these guys. And then you surround them with elite talent. Not enough is talked about, Anthony Cirelli, Eric Cernak, Ryan McDonough for what he did, and, he almost came to Edmonton, which would have been a fascinating take in the hockey world. But I would have to disagree, so I'm going to have to do my own statistics and analytics.
Well, and I don't know if all those guys are to his credit, actually, with this. And the other thing, the argument I have to that is Cirelli in Boston did a lot of good work in who he brought in there. Now, of course, he traded some of that work away, but and then he ends up in Edmonton and blows the whole thing. And Steve Yzerman is still yet to prove himself in Detroit. He's only got a couple of years under his belt over there. He left Tampa in, I think, 2018.
2 years ago. Yeah.
So it would be, he finished the 2018-2019 season with them then. But he was only there for 8 years. So yeah, so let's do an in-depth study. Let's see what you got. You bring it, brother, next week, and let's see where people stand after we're all done ripping this great legend apart from my behalf.
The one sad thing about this whole thing is that whoever wins in the next little bit, we just know that playoffs are going to be done. And we have to wait till September for the preseason to start. So it'll be busy, but it's still going to be sad without any hockey in the NHL level.
Okay, let me rant. The NHL. I want to rant on the NHL. I don't know how you guys feel out there in hockey land, but the NHL is the most frustrating league. People call it, the little brother to the big five. They say they're not even a top five. NASCAR is bigger. I don't know if NASCAR still is more popular. I think ESPN, TNT are really going to do well. And by the way, I wasn't a big believer at the beginning on those TV contracts, but I'm actually getting very excited about next year, even seeing who they're bringing in and what they're trying to do with the game down there. And we're seeing players, of course, the United States programs, players are coming even out of those southern states, which is interesting, by the way. Tampa Bay, there has not been a single player ever born in Tampa Bay that plays in the NHL. Interesting. Interesting stat. So what they do is they're all what we call snowbirds, right? Mostly Canadians that move down to Tampa and then they play hockey. Okay, rant. How many people followed Ron MacLean? This is what got it started for me. Followed Ron MacLean's interview in the last game, on Game 4, with Gary Bettman. He didn't pull out the hard punches. Ron MacLean that we knew. I mean, I remember, it's like Bettman was always, you could tell he was always nervous talking to Ron because Ron would pull out the hard questions. Not anymore. It's just like he basically just gave it to him on a silver platter. You know, when people talk about homerism, they say, when you're, interviewing, you're not going to ask the hard questions in your local market. So if you're in Toronto, you're not asking the hard questions. If you're in New York with the Rangers, you're not asking the hard questions, wherever it be. And I felt like Ron MacLean didn't ask those hard questions. This is just me. Conspiracy theory, and maybe we can work with someone down the road and we'll find someone to come on as a guest that has to deal with this from a PR state. But this is what I worry about, Pavel. I already see teams cannot talk about the reffing. They cannot talk about the structure of the game. They cannot complain without getting massive fines. Players, they'll fine them to the max of $5,000 if they complain. We're not talking about on ice stuff. We're talking about off ice stuff, the things that they're frustrated with. It's just like it's the most non-genuine league in the world. It's controlled, manipulated, and I feel like it's so much bullying that goes on in this league. I love hockey, but it makes me appreciate some of these other leagues when they allow them to be open about stuff. It's just like, I don't know. I don't even know where to go with that. So what's your take?
Is that your rant? Are you done ranting?
No, I have more, but the stuff I want to say is I'm not allowed to speak with those words.
Okay. So a few comments about what you shared. So I'm not completely off against what you're saying, and I do somewhat agree. The first few things that I kind of want to mention is Gary Bettman is a lawyer. So he has lawyer speak. So any interview you're going to have, he's going to do lawyer speak, which, as you and I know, when we've dealt with lawyers, it's very, very monotone and very vague because you don't want to get sued or you don't want to have any liability. Right. Second thing that it comes down to is he was hired by the owners, not by the NHLPA. They are a separate entity. So he represents what the owners want. Yeah. And if the Oilers owners are unhappy with the product, which I don't think they are, there's always minor things that they want to tweak at and work on, then he will take the brunt of the blame and fans can hate him. They can boo him, as we'll probably watch whoever wins the Stanley Cup. They're going to be booing Gary Bettman because it's a tradition. I don't know why. He's been in the position for a very long time. His track record, albeit spotty, he has expanded the NHL to 32 teams. He has grown the business to a $4.5 billion system and moving away from the pandemic with what was done. and he has tried to grow in the game. He is not going to criticize the refs on national TV, especially in a short segment interview with Ron MacLean. First off, as you and I know, when we've done interviews and when we've connected with people, and you look at some of the most skilled interviewers in the world who are excellent in connecting with their guests, you have to take time to get to know your guests. You have to do your research. You have to know the dynamic, and you have to have time to answer the questions. When you have a short little 15 to 20 minute segment, you're only getting sound bites. And of course, people are going to fixate on that and talk about it consistently on the radio station or wherever they're at. So you can't have an in-depth conversation. Now, are they going to discuss refereeing? They always do. I mean, the goal with Brett Hall and the Dallas Stars and Buffalo Sabres, that changed the game. Whether you agree that was a goal or not, that changed the dynamic. Yeah. They're going to change it in a group meeting when they have with GMs, and they're going to make a decision. So they're not going to do it on live TV and say, I was wrong, our refs suck. Because then that's going to shake the foundation. And as you know, we've seen this in politics, and I don't like to get political, is that sometimes when politicians make certain comments about something, sometimes economically that can impact whether it's the stock market or a business or stuff. So if Gary Bettman goes out and says, the refs suck, this is all kind of rigged, they're bad, I can't believe that this is going, or I really want Vegas to win, the product of the NHL is going to lose money, and the last thing they want to do is lose money. Can it be improved? Yes. Are there ways that we've discussed that we can better the NHL? 100%. I also want to make note that even though other sports organizations, whether it's the NBA, FIFA, all these, or NFL, if you think that an NHL has optics problems, there's more corruption and issues there. Right? If you ever looked at FIFA, you would know that there's corruption at the craziest level. Yeah. So the NHL is peanuts compared to that. So I will concede on that. But Gary Bettman is the perfect spokesperson for the owners. He knows exactly what to say, and we can be all mad at what we want, but it's not going to change unless we vote with our wallets. And again, we've talked about this. When gambling comes in, that will have a major impact because people will want to know, am I betting on Vasilevsky coming on net if he's playing injured? Or like you're saying, Toffoli. I'm betting that Toffoli will have a +2 night. He'll get an assist, maybe a goal. Yeah. And I don't know that because he's a game time decision, or he has an injury and we don't know what's going on. Yeah. Right? That's where it comes
down. You're making a really good point. Bettman is the perfect spokesperson, but he's the worst entertainment. And you are right. Nobody's going to come out and say our refs suck. I mean, that's not good for your game. But what I do feel is the tough questions are being instructed not to ask certain questions that go in a certain direction. I don't have a problem if they're political answers. If Bettman's always done that, he never does answer it. But that it's almost like the game of wrestling and pro wrestling, right? You still come out, you say the things, you get the stupid answer, you get the stupid result that you don't want, but you're glad someone represented you. I don't feel the fans get represented, and the fans are what make this game. So I don't like the fact the hard questions aren't asked. Even if they said, hey, I'm going to ask you this question, however you answer is up to you. And I agree. We have guests on our show. Even if I disagree with them, I'm not going to call them out. Why would they ever come back again? And so I'm going to work with that. However, my issue calls back to the season. When a team complains about their own league, including the owner, and they get fined $250,000, that's what I don't like. Don't go punish them and give them a spanking in public. I mean, I think that that's ridiculous. I think that they should, so Bettman comes out and says what has been said by the New York Rangers is totally inappropriate. They need to follow the right protocols, I think that that's what it should be. But granted, you know what, Pavel, you got me convinced there that Ron MacLean wasn't so bad. He just should have asked a harder question.
No, 100%. And I think he was being asked some of the harder questions at the beginning of the series between Tampa and Montreal, where he does the state of the NHL union, as one would say. And there are some really excellent writers and interviewees and journalists out in what's it called, not in the NHL world, but also with the Athletic, which we're big fans of, and they know how to ask the right questions. I mean, the big one right now is the Chicago case. You know, people are asking about that, and they need to pressure that, and there needs to be more of a momentum.
Which by the way, we do not have any new information for people, because we said we would come back when we have facts. It probably will not be settled, as we mentioned before, everyone. Next week, so this is our last NHL edition show. Next week will be our NHL expansion and draft preview that we're going to be doing. And then the 21st and the 23rd is the expansion and the entry drafts. And we're going to be doing a special show where we got specific details. We're still working on how we're going to air that for you guys before we take a break. So the Chicago information, we're pretty much going to be probably just releasing on our Facebook page. And Pavel is working hard at trying to follow that closely, just to give you guys an update.
No lawyers are getting back to me, as lawyery as I can be.
Hey, I want to throw something out there. This day in history, and this is interesting because this day in history in 2007, the Edmonton Oilers sent an RFA offer sheet to Thomas Vanek, 7 years and $50 million, which was matched by the Buffalo Sabres.
Wow.
I mean, I remember that day so vividly. You were like, oh my God, that's so much money. Or you were like, yeah, finally a guy who could score goals. And it went nowhere. I think everybody knew that it was going nowhere. So anyway, I thought it was a little tidbit that would be.
So then do you offer sheet Kirill Kaprizov, the jersey that I have behind me, you know? Because he hasn't signed his contract yet.
So you are, let's just say you are the new Seattle Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to offer him for an RFA sheet offer?
3 by 11.
3 by 11.
3 years, 11 million each.
Oh, I was going to say $3 million a year for 11 years.
If you're getting that for Kaprizov, whew.
Man, that would be what, 4 first-round draft picks for Seattle to give up? Oh, or the Rangers couldn't afford that, so they'd have to put something the other way. Interesting.
Well, they can because they're going after Eichel. So.
Yeah. Well, but Eichel is in a trade, though, right? It's a trade.
Oh yes.
One's an offer sheet, and the other. Yeah. So anyway, interesting. So and mentioning to everyone. Interesting enough, I just noticed on my Twitter notes from some of the scouts and stuff out there right now, off season. This is exciting news for all you hockey fans, especially in the province of Ontario and Canada. Owen Power, Brendan Othman, Shane Wright, Francisco Pinelli, and a bunch of others have hit the ice in Toronto. It feels a little bit like things are getting back to normal. It's off-season training for these guys, with it. An interesting note. For those that are following the entry draft, also, Brant Clark, he's from the Ottawa area. He made a statement that he would love to play for his hometown, Ottawa. But this is what I want to ask you. We're not going to include this in our other segment that we do. But he states he likely won't go at number 10. He expects to go higher. Not many players say those things boldly. So which brings me to think, Pavel, how is that going to be taken by owners? Will they like that confidence? Because that's a little Taylor Hall-like. Thought?
It's tough to say because it's definitely confidence, and you're definitely seeing a different new era of players who are coming up and saying I belong to be a little bit higher, right? Because normally players are just lucky, say I'm lucky enough to play it. So it's definitely breeding a new type of player. Will it sit well or not? I mean, time will tell. It depends on their performance. It depends on how the way they do with juniors and, when they're drafted, what their performance is like. It's tough. I enjoy the confidence of some players. At the same time, you have a lot to prove to get to the NHL, and it's the elite of the elite. So
would you look at that as a positive, or would you look at that as a little bit of a caution, someone who's overconfident and should be more humble? Or would you say, I love the confidence, and this is a player I want to draft high? If you like the player, like we're talking, if you like the on-ice ability of this player, would the off-ice attitude be something that you would buy into?
I don't know. I'm torn because what about you? I'm torn because as the player, you want to make sure you have a good dynamic in the room. You want to make sure that you're not bringing in somebody that could disrupt that dynamic. But at the same time, you like to see confidence from players, but confidence can be shown in very different ways. You can show confidence on the ice. You can show confidence in your skill in terms of what you're doing. So
I would say it depends on how you're building your team. Some teams are being built more as a humble team focus, and some teams are being built on the greatness of individual players.
Yeah.
You know, like I think the New York Rangers are, you know, and no offense to all Ranger fans out there, I don't think that their team is built on, you know, there's a lot of independent players in New York, and it always has been. I think it's what is kind of the history of the game, and being how long Original Six, being in the biggest city, all those types of things I add. They have a lot of really confidence. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Which takes me, I want to chat and kind of wrap up our today here with talking about buyouts.
Okay.
So we're going to enter this summer's free agent market with a lot of buyouts. It's sounding like the first window for the contract buyout opens 24 hours following the awarding of the Stanley Cup. So, and then it's going to close. They have from whenever that time is until July 27th. Which will be around 3 o'clock Mountain or 5 o'clock Eastern time. So let's just talk about those buyouts, and let's go to the New York Rangers. I want to talk about the first potential buyout, Tony DeAngelo.
Okay.
Now, I think many people have already heard that they finalized plans to buy out the final season. I think it's just under $5 million average value of his contract. Now, we know most people will agree that his defensive game needs a little work, but he is a very skilled puck-moving blue liner. Now, given his personal baggage, he's overconfident too, and he has other issues sometimes on the ice he's had that they tried to deal with. The question is, will an NHL club take a chance on him? I think we would say yes. But, I mean, many clubs will, but it's just who will do it that feels their dressing room strong enough, right?
So Montreal was in the running before the playoffs started, and I know that they were looking at him.
You think they still will?
Yes, I think they can.
Okay, interesting. And also
especially with the expansion, depending on who they lose.
And also the Calgary Flames were also in on a lot of the rumors around bringing DeAngelo in too. Interesting.
I only speak to that because there's a lot of players in the NHL who have turned their lives around, whether it's like a Zach Kassian, a Mike Hoffman, you know, who have had some personal troubles for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And to be frank, like, I don't care what Tony DeAngelo believes or what he says or does on Twitter. That to me is irrelevant.
Exactly.
Right? Like, you can post whatever belief you want. That doesn't bother me. What bothers me is that you are representing an organization, an agency, and like you and I, if we were to represent and say something publicly while representing the logo of our organization, there definitely would be some questions from our superiors who would say, well, listen, do you think that was the best course of action? So you have to balance the work-life thing, because that is a very important thing. But I think somebody takes a chance on DeAngelo, and I think he will move it. That being said, I could also see him going to the KHL next year if things don't pan out.
Yeah, that's a good call. That's a good call, because maybe he just wants to get a year or two under his belt, kind of prove himself. If there's not a team that's willing, because if it's too low of contracts, once he gets his buyout, if maybe the offers coming in are like $2-3 million only, right? So that they can bury that baby if they need to. So if he doesn't like it, I could see him going to the KHL.
So quickly, speaking of buyouts, or speaking of confidence, and it came to my mind. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit quickly about Josh Ho-Sang with the New York Islanders. And when Lou took over, Josh Ho-Sang was drafted to their AHL team. And he publicly stated that he deserves to be better than on that AHL team or on the fourth line. And that was an issue where he was dropped. and he was not brought back up. And he is still vowing for services because he hasn't played for 2 years now.
Yeah.
And like, that is an example of cockiness and a player who has played in the game.
So let's talk about another player playing in Montreal, Jonathan Drouin. Same thing when they made this, because he wasn't going to play he was too good to play in the AHL, right? Yeah. And Tampa was kind of making him, and they waited and made that move for Sergachev, which obviously turned out to be a great move.
Paid off,
I mean, I almost say, Drouin, where are you? Come on, prove yourself in Montreal. I mean, if you think of what they should have in Montreal right now, this would be an evened up series right now if some of those players were performing. But let's go back. So so that's another example of some of that going on. So do you think, before we move on to a couple, so I got about 13, 14 guys. I'm going to mention them off the top of my head, and then let's tap on some. Do you think Calgary will take a chance on Tony DeAngelo? At least put an offer out there, whatever.
Yes, and especially since they're more likely to lose a defenseman in the expansion.
And maybe Mark Giordano. We'll talk about that next week, maybe, right? With the expansion. Woo, could you imagine? Okay, so let's talk. These are in no particular order. I'm just going to quickly do some quick hits, and then let's cover them. So the possibility of James Neal getting bought out in Edmonton, it lies. We have Eric Johnson, who did not play a lot over in Colorado. There is talk on the final 2 years. Keith Yandel hadn't played much in the playoffs there at all, if he did get in a game. So he's older, but again, a player that would maybe be one. San Jose, there is talk around Martin Jones getting a buyout. So could Martin Jones be like a 1B for somebody? Around the Edmonton and Northwestern and Pacific, you mentioned it last week, the Duncan Keith situation, where Friedman now has been talking about there's not much cachet at the price tag. So could they buy out, which I have a hard time seeing them buy out because they're not going to save enough money for it.
To get Jones or Hamilton like they want.
Well, no. I mean, if they want prospects and all this stuff and not to take any money back, then they might have to buy out. So on top of it, Zach Parise over in
Minnesota.
Minnesota there. Jake Virtanen, they tried. So it's important to know that they tried several times. They could not find takers for him last year, and he had some off-ice issues and on-ice issues. Ben Bishop.
Well, that off-ice issue hasn't been resolved yet. So that is a completely,
Yeah, but what I'm pointing out is buyouts, right?
Yes.
So do they want the hassle of it? Then there's Ben Bishop. He was dealing from knee surgery. He worked out with the club throughout the year and stuff like that. But could he be bought out if healthy? Because they might decide to protect Khudobin. That's also another expansion thing that we can talk about next week. But Bishop is a possibility, which would be a good goalie. In Montreal, how about Paul Byron? He was put on waivers three times throughout the season. But his performance in the playoffs could mean that he sticks. Mikko Koskinen, he's got 1 year left, so there's a situation there. Anton Strawman in Florida. Danny DeKeyser with the Red Wings is a potential. And Oli Imada with the Los Angeles Kings. So these are some of the players. What stands out in your head right now on buyouts that I was mentioning?
Well, you didn't mention Louis Eriksson. I think that would be a big buyout for Vancouver Canucks.
You think that they'd go that route still?
Yes. Yeah, because they're going to need cap space for Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. And they're going to need to bring in one other piece just to play because for whatever, and I think it's going to be a depth guy somewhere in the bottom six because that's what Vancouver needs. For Edmonton, I think it looks down to either James Neal or Mikko Koskinen, if not both. Oli Mata, I don't think is going to get bought out. Neither Ben Bishop because they're going to try to play. And I think that Hudobin's the one that's out, the odd man out, just because of what Bishop can do. However, with injury and Jake Ottinger coming up as their goaltender, I think that's the goaltender for Dallas of the future.
Okay.
Let's see, who else did you mention? Jake Virtanen, I think if anything, that's not going to be a buyout. That's going to be more so of an end of contract, given what's going to happen with that case in my predicament or prediction. Yeah, that would be about it. I don't know who else would buy anything out. So that's who stands out to me in those buyouts. My only rant when I was up on Cap Friendly when I saw that is that one of the names, and it was the final one, was Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was a potential buyout. Yeah, if you go on Cap Friendly, I was there yesterday, and it was showing me at the bottom of the name, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, of a popular buyout. I even took a screenshot. I can share it with everybody. And I was wondering, why would you just sign this guy and then all of a sudden want to buy him out? Is Holland being like, no, we need more money for Duncan Keith. You gotta sign.
So someone at Cap Friendly's got something interesting going on, eh?
Yeah. And they're really good, so that's why I was very surprised to see that, because I was like, really, that's who you're gonna go with?
But you know, the downside with buyouts, right, is the fact that, like, even like, because you're talking about Nugent Hopkins, I just pulled it up here. I can't see what you were mentioning, but Andre Sekera, right? He's still got this coming year and the year after at $1.5 million of dead cap space. They got almost $1 million sitting there with Lucic. Well, they got other players coming off. So do they go the buyout route? You know, I don't see Koskinen being a buyout at all. I see, if they are, it's going to be James Neal, but they may pick up a player to offset between James Neal and someone else that they can protect. That's another forward if they were actually going to do it, I think, because they have room. I mean, I see people putting out protected lists. Bob Stauffer puts out a protected list. Josh Archibald and Zach Kassian protecting in the expansion draft. We'll talk about that more next week, but come on. We don't protect Zach Kassian and Josh Archibald and leave your guys like Tyler Benson, who's now ready without waivers to now play, you know, who's been a point a game per se player in your farm team and faithful all the way through, local boy who can play under the pressure, unless you really don't believe and you just let them go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, but so Danny DeKeyser, though, some of the inside people, I was going to say a couple of the other ones there. Danny DeKeyser, they really, there's a lot of talk that Steve wants to move on from Danny. And remember, it wasn't Steve who brought Danny in. That was a Holland piece. So that makes me think, if there's a buyout there and they're still looking and they haven't settled that left side, could Danny DeKeyser? I believe Danny DeKeyser is a left. I'm not sure.
Can you remind me if Brett Seabrook in Chicago has been, he is done, or does he have one more year left? I know he had some injury issues, but.
You're talking about in Chicago?
Yeah, because I know that people were talking about buying him out. That was something discussed last, but I don't know if he retired or what he decided.
He's got 3 years. He's on the injured reserve, and
so he's on the injured reserve.
6.875, but for 3 years. So that's dead cap space essentially for the 3 years.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Because that was the one that I couldn't remember what he was on. But
and they also this year they also have, because Shaw has one more year on dead cap space as well. So they got about $10 million in dead cap space on the long-term injured reserve.
Yeah.
Interesting on their points.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with the cap salary moving forward, especially with everything that's been highlighted with Tampa Bay. And again, we don't say that it's wrong because they use the cap circumvention to their advantage.
Absolutely.
But I'm wondering what teams are going to do this offseason with them. Because remember, everyone, you can be 10% off the cap in the offseason, but you have to shed that salary just before you start the regular season.
Which I'm sure Tampa, which we'll talk about next week, is going to work their butts off because they got players to sign and they're $5 million over already for next year. Hey, last piece. We're going to have to get ready to close up here. Coaching. I mentioned just before we started the show, I wanted to talk a little bit about coaching. We're seeing a lot of younger coaches coming in. So, for example, in Seattle, we're seeing Haskell coming in. He's a young coach that just has got a little bit of experience, came from NCAA. Buffalo, we see Granada. And now, of course, Tournier over in Arizona. So there's some different theories. By the way, if you go to The Athletic, they got some great conversations around that. If you subscribe to The Athletic, I would encourage you. Great articles if you're a hockey fan of all teams. But what's your take on some of these younger guys? Do you think it's time to bring fresh blood? If you're a rebuilding team, do you go younger? If you're a team that's over the top. I know there's a lot of guys that I've been following, guys that are close in the Rangers. They were upset at the hiring. They actually kind of wanted them to go fresh. I know Knobloch is another. Chris Knobloch he was the coach, by the way, for the Erie Otters back in the day with Connor McDavid and stuff. He's had some great seasons. What's your take on these young coaches, and why do you think that we're seeing it more now than ever?
So I like it a lot because the thing is NHL, like, people talk about, well, it's a recycled sport, or there's always a recycling of coaches and stuff. So you're giving a new guy an opportunity. And sometimes the effect of a new coach coming into a team can't really be seen immediately. So I'm going to use the prime example of Toronto Maple Leafs. Sheldon Keefe was a prime example. So you have a veteran in Mike Babcock, and he did what he can with that team. And certainly there was some dynamics there that were at play that people weren't happy about, and his time didn't end well in Toronto. But everyone knew that Kyle Dubas's guy was Sheldon Keefe out from the Marlies. And he comes up and he plays and he gets that team going. Now, that first season when he replaced Babcock, it wasn't that long. So it was kind of a small sample size. But this year, what he was able to do with Toronto was incredible, right? And people can bash on the playoff performance. That's one thing. But in the regular season, they were the best team in the North Division, and they knew how to play. And he knew how to connect with the young guys. And what I'm finding is that with players coming up, and we talked about the confidence a little bit earlier, and saying that, you should go higher in the draft, you have to deal with players in a different dynamic. It's no longer than it's the old school coaching, the Joe Quenneville style of coaching, right? Which works in some areas. So I like new, fresh blood because it gives new people opportunity. That being said, I think we idolize the head coaching job so much that we don't realize that head coach has a team around him with his assistant coaches for the power play unit, for the penalty kill, for specialty teams, for a variety of other reasons, right? Face-off wins, right? Goalie coaches, all these things. There's team dynamics. And so the head coach is a glorified position because it's the one and only that he faces the media. He takes the questions. It's in the name, head. Yeah. But the team around him that works with him to develop that team is a perfect example of how you have a cohesion of how to better your team. I mean, DJ Smith and what he did with the Ottawa Senators this year, incredible, right? Again, a young up-and-coming coach, really good success, was an assistant in Toronto, and again, came up. So I do like these hires. I think we need more of it. That being said, it could sometimes fault. You look at someone like David Quinn, who had his first opportunity with the Rangers, and it wasn't a good mix, and he had a hard time connecting with the young guys and getting them going. And then the one game that he had to sit out because of COVID, they ended up beating or spanking the Philadelphia Flyers 8-1 or 9-1 or whatever that game was, which was silly, right? Yeah, exactly. So does it help? Does it not help? Right? You look at even Montreal Canadiens, Luke Richardson, was it? Who took over for Dominic Ducharme while he was in COVID protocol, and what he was able to do versus the Vegas Golden Knights. So I like it. I think we need more young, fresh coaches. And I think the NHL needs to take a chance to even start looking at KHL coaches, right? Because there are a lot of good coaches out there.
And looking at it, you go back and you look at some situations, that worked out really good in Tampa for them, even though at first it didn't seem it would be a good deal. I think it went terrible in Edmonton. They tried with the rebuilding years. Even Tom Rennie, who was experienced, but he was not an experienced head coach. We had Tom Rennie. You had
Ralph Kruger,
Dallas Aikens, Todd Nelson.
Who's in Anaheim right now.
Yeah, but again, a lot of people, I'm looking and saying, I don't know if Dallas has done a lot for those guys, or is he just a development coach? And I think that's the difference. Some are meant to be a head coach, some of these young guys, and some are development coaches. And you're not going to know other than seeing a track record. And some of them, you're taking a shot because you don't know what they're like with professional. Now, I don't mean minor pro. I mean actually the best league in the entire world. So like analytics, I don't think you can just say it's one way or it's another. So, well, that gives us a wrap on our show, man. We've gone the extra.
As always.
Any last thoughts, Pavel, before we wrap?
I mean, it's been an exciting playoff series. It's been an exciting playoffs overall. I think we have been very lucky and blessed with the type of talent, skill, goals, plays that we have seen, the goaltending, everything. And I think it just goes to show you that the game is better than ever. It's grown. And say what you want about COVID, it was been an exciting year watching. And good luck to both the Tampa Bay Lightning for a potential repeat, or the Montreal Canadiens for one of the largest upsets, Cinderella stories ever. So whoever wins, go team.
Wow. I was going to say that I think we are looking at a team of dynasty in the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like it or hate it, fans, that's what makes the game pumped. Guys, I just want to mention the WHL. They're working on changes to the U.S. division. So stay tuned to Two Guys and Hockey Talk in our Facebook page for more updates on many things that happen throughout the week. Make postings yourself, throw news out to us. And next week will be our final regular edition as far as regular shows. And we're going to bring and talk all about the expansion draft, the teams, who are they protecting, who are they not, what do we know, what's the rumors, any new signings, any new trades. We'll bring it to you June 21st, which is the expansion. We're going to have a special edition coming to you live, as well as June 23rd for the NHL entry draft. So we're going to talk all about those things live. So exciting. Thanks, guys, for joining us. But in the meantime, go ahead.
In between time. Oh, I was going to say, in the meantime, in between time, keep your sticks on the ice. Like, share, and subscribe. We love hearing from you. Stay safe, everyone.
Take care, guys. Cheers.